Now, as Nigeria looks to the World Bank for a $5.2 billion facility to expand electricity generation, Dallas PV Managing Director and CEO of Egbin Power joins me to discuss ways to resolve challenges in the country's power sector. Dallas, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, most times when we talk about power on any of our shows, most times it's not exactly positive, and we always talk, and the themes always revolve around the challenges and what has been done, what more can the government or even the private sector do to make the sector better. Now we're seeing Nigeria, the government seeking a $5.2 billion loan from the World Bank. But let me start with the privatization. There are now mixed views on whether or not this privatization that we embarked on has failed. From where you're sitting, would you say that the privatization process has indeed failed? If we want to be honest with ourselves.
I think when you look at the results from a private company such as Egbin, it's a combination of 70% owned private, 30% by the government. We put the capital into this, not just the price that we paid, $780 million, but we've also spent $402 million, and we've taken that plant, a 35-year-old plant, from 200 megawatts, one of 6 units available, to all 6 units available, 1,320 megawatts. That provides 9.5 million people in Nigeria with power that wasn't available just 3.5 years ago.
So how are you dealing with all the debt? Because I know that debt is a big issue. You're being owed, and then, of course, there's a gas challenges, and then maybe not from your end, but on the DISCO side, there's the issue of cost-reflective tariff. We don't have that yet. So all of that, I see, continues to affect the entire value chain. What is your perspective?
Well, Egbin is currently at 116 billion naira. That's about 331 million US dollars. We're working hand in hand with the government, CBN, NBET, the Minister of Power, the Vice President's office, everybody that we can. Because out of the 116 billion, 95% of that is owed from Egbin to someone.
Okay.
65 to 70% is gas, the banks, and then foreign energy providers for equipment, critical supplies, those kind of things.
Okay, now this $5.2 billion that the government is seeking from the World Bank to expand electricity in the country, what are your thoughts, and what do you think will be the likely impact on the sector in general?
We really don't know yet, because it just came out. It just came out with the announcement. We don't know the details. We think it's a step in the right direction, certainly, because the government has stepped up to say this is bigger than just the individual players. It's a collective effort between the government, the World Bank, the IFC, and the private investors. How do we make this work together?
Now, also in the government's economic and recovery growth plan for the power sector, as far as the power sector is concerned, they're also imputing a cost-reflective tariff. Now, I know that that's been a challenge. We tried to have one last year that was overturned, and Labour was happy, but obviously DISCOs weren't happy, and of course consumers were happy for obvious reasons. They don't get to pay more, but I'm just thinking that's also a very tricky situation. But what is your perspective?
Well, we think for everybody, a cost-reflective tariff is fair, because one, it has to cover the cost. It has to cover the cost, but on the other side of that, the consumer deserves to get what they pay for. They deserve to get electricity, not because they want it, but because they deserve it. The cost-reflective tariff has to be in place so that you can recover the components of what your costs are only. Nobody's guaranteed any return. Even with a cost-reflective tariff, you still have to do your job as a generator, as a DISCO, and as the government entity.
Is that a silver bullet?
It's never a silver bullet. There's not if there was, we would have looked for that a long time ago. I will tell you that working together with the government, TCN, they have a new MD, a businessman. You have new commissioners in there that have just taken over and have conducted one-on-one meetings with everybody. So that we're all on the same level playing field. We're all working together toward the same purpose. It hasn't happened like that in the last 3.5 years.
Now, recently the Power Minister came out to say that the DISCOs weren't, as far as remittances were concerned, their remittances were poor. And I'm sure that if you ask the DISCOs, they're going to have a truckload of reasons why, to counter that. But what is your perspective? Do you think that that has been the case?
I can't say on behalf of the DISCOs. What I can say is, every side, DISCOs, GENCOs, we have our own challenges. Having said that, I know that we're working together with the DISCOs. We meet on a regular basis with the minister to talk about these issues, but not only the issues, but the solutions going forward. I know that they have proposed different solutions to the minister. He's taken them under consideration. We have proposed different solutions from our side for them.
Such as?
Such as just working together to how do we help TCN deliver the energy where it's needed. How is it that we can work together? Because whatever concerns us concerns the DISCOs. If we can't get the power to them, So it's not just the GenCos. It's working with TCN and it's working with the DISCOs to make it work together.
So in that chain, what is the missing link between the TCN? You say you want to get the TCN to be able to work better so that you can carry the gas part to the DISCOs to share. So what are the missing links that you think can be fixed?
Well, I think we're addressing those now. I think with the minister, with the vice president in the president's office, I think with TCN, they spend a lot of time, as if you saw yesterday, they've raised a significant amount of money to improve their system. They have a new MD, so the whole culture and behavior of TCN as a government entity has changed. It's much better now than it was in January. And I think going forward, the missing link is to continue to improve upon what we can without burdening the consumer too much.
Okay, so when you look at the plan, when you look at efforts that are being made so far, and not to dwell on the negatives, because they're also out there and they're also realities within the sector, would you say that it's not particularly a hopeless situation and that it can actually be fixed? Because we're coming from, it's 50 years, over 50 years as a country, and we're yet to do up to 7,000 megawatts at any given time.
Well, I think you have to look at it as there is a path going forward. Currently there's about 2,500 megawatts of stranded capacity now. We get the gas, as we talked about before. You get the gas to some of those plants like Egbin. We have almost 1,000 megawatts stranded today simply because we don't have gas. Then we continue to work with the government with TCN. We continue to work with CBN. We continue to fund the projects and then help perform the projects. Because again, just because it's TCN doesn't mean that we don't work together. We all have to work together in the value chain to make this work. It's not a short term. Nobody invested in the short term. We're all in it for the long term, and that's what we have to stick to that and continue to communicate and work together. Okay,
so we released the stranded 2,000 megawatts added to what we're doing right now, give or take maybe, just under or just above 4,000 megawatts. I think it's what, 6,000, that's still,
No. Currently, yesterday we did 4,000 megawatts.
Okay.
Which is not good enough for the people. If you add the other, we're almost at 7,000 megawatts. Currently, you have new projects that are out there that are being developed today that will take us to 10,000. That leads us on the way.
Does that also include energy mix diversification, solar?
It will beyond the 7,000. It takes into consideration the solar projects and the other technology that are being brought into Nigeria. I think but you have to start with a good base mix, and that is what you have with the gas generation and with the hydro situation. If you don't have a stable, the solar programs and the other distributed generation, the 20 megawatts, those are good in pockets, but it doesn't help the system stabilize. Okay,
and I'm thinking about the investments that we're making, even if we get to 10,000 megawatts, and I'm thinking about the 5.2 billion from the World Bank, and I know that there are other monies, there are other sources that the government is also considering, but do you think we should be more aggressive in terms of investments into the sector? Should we, for now, focus on fixing what the fundamental problems are before, or can we do both at the same time?
I think because you can do both at the same time.
Even 10,000 megawatts for this country, 180 million is still small.
It's too small. But it's a step in the right direction. When you went from where we were 3.5 years ago to where we're at today, we've come a long way in just a short period. Because remember, you had to restructure the whole market.
Sure.
I think you can do both. I think you continue to look at investments going forward, but you have to make sure that you've addressed the problems to get to this point so that you can get to the future where you need to be.
Dallas, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Dallas PV, Managing Director and CEO of Egbin Power, taking a look at Nigeria's power sector challenges.